Everyone loves a great action sequence, but as audience members, we don't regularly take into account the incredible physical prowess portrayed by the stuntmen and women of Hollywood. These are the top 10 stunts of all time.
I used to drag here back in high school. That railroad crossing up there is exactly a quarter mile away from here. On green, I'm going for it.
Starting us off at number 10, The Fast and the Furious. The whole franchise is basically an exercise in constant stunt one-upsmanship. From crashing cars, to jumping between cars, to jumping off trains, to jumping cars off trains, to a fucking tank. The Fast and the Furious series did it all. But we prefer to go old school for our number 10 slot with the original 2001 film that kicked the series off right. No, not the lowered Honda driving under a moving semi, but the original Dodge Charger flip from the final fateful drag race. Lots of modern films flip cars with something called a cannon, a stunt device attached to the vehicle that releases compressed air into a metal piston which shoots into the ground, knocking the car trunk over hood. The Dark Knight's truck flip uses one. Fast Five's prison bus tumble used 3. But the original Fast and the Furious took a slightly easier approach. They built a ramp onto the truck with just a single metal pipe and drove onto it. Simple.
Okay, now remember, it's a rolling off motion that disengages the bond. When the meter is blue, that's full adhesion. Easy way to remember, blue is glue.
And when it's red?
Dead.
Mission Impossible is another series predicated on ridiculous stunt work. From jumping off buildings to dangling from cliffs, Tom Cruise has had his fair share of high-altitude encounters. But nothing else from the franchise quite matches our number 9. Mission Impossible 4's Burj Khalifa sequence. Not only is this stunt scene stunning, but it's entirely real. That's Tom does all his own stunts Cruise running around like a maniac on the outside of the world's tallest building, 160 floors above the ground. They did build an 80-foot-tall replica at Paramount Studios, but Cruise only used it for the 200-some-odd hours of rehearsal before actually jumping out the window of the real thing. Of course, he's harnessed in for safety, but almost every frame of the sequence takes place 1,700 feet off the ground, with the only exception being the dialogue, which was recorded at 60 feet due to the overwhelmingly loud crosswinds that occur at a quarter mile in the air. But before you write that off as tame in comparison, consider that 1,700 feet or 60, it's all the same if you hit the ground.
You both know what's at stake here. We cannot afford to lose that list.
Yes, Mom.
But if you like Mission Impossible stunts, the James Bond franchise is basically its big brother. We could fill this whole list with James Bond pre-credit sequences, but for number 8, we're just going to go with Skyfall. Joining the likes of other classic motorcycle stunts that narrowly missed this list, like Terminator 2, Triple X, and the movie it pays homage to, The Great Escape, Skyfall's pre-credit sequence has a motorcycle chase for the history books. Apart from the few obvious green screen bits with Daniel Craig, almost the entirety of this incredible sequence consisted of world record-holding motocross riders jumping from rooftop to rooftop on real motorcycles, flying along ledges barely a meter wide without even a helmet to protect them. Now, if you think Daniel Craig deserves a little more recognition for his Casino Royale parkour sequence, maybe direct your attention to something even better. Number 7, District B13. While lots of modern action films have tried to capitalize on the recent novelty of parkour by incorporating it into their set pieces, they've usually used a combination of stunt doubles, wire work, and CGI to do it. But District B13 took a different approach. They just cast the guy who invented it. David Bell, who you see here, is credited as the founder of the parkour movement, and everything you're seeing happen on screen is actually real. No wires, no CGI, no pads, just parkour.
Ready? Here we go.
Stuntmen often find themselves falling from uncomfortably high places, but it's not often that they base whole scenes on extended periods of freefall. Fortunately for us, the past few years have seen a number of movies with ridiculous stunt skydiving sequences. There's been the new Godzilla with a stunning scene which did use real skydivers, but also a whole lot of CGI. Iron Man 3, which had the Red Bull skydiving team hide parachutes beneath their costumes for an incredibly choreographed mid-air rescue that took over 600 parachute jumps to pull off. But our number 6 is actually Transformers 3: Dark of the Moon, which employed a team of wingsuit base jumpers to perform the first ever proximity flying through skyscrapers. The team spent 2 weeks practicing their formations and movements on building-shaped mountains in Switzerland before attempting this stunt. And Michael Bay wouldn't be Michael Bay if he didn't throw some extra CG in the mix, but the end result is exactly as death-defying as it seems. A few stuntmen in wingsuits weaving between buildings, flying on air. And while we're on the subject of base jumping, we'd be remiss if we didn't mention awesome stunts like Triple X's Corvette bridge jump to parachute and the Spy Who Loved Me's base jump on skis. But our number 5 goes to a different James Bond pre-credit sequence, because one simply wasn't enough. And while we've seen various incarnations of 007 flip both cars and boats, fight thousands of feet in the air, and run on the backs of actual live crocodiles, our pick goes to the serene bungee jump from GoldenEye. There's no real trick here, what you see is what you get, but this stunt makes our list because it's so elegant, which might have something to do with the fact that the stuntman is a professional skydiver, or that it's just a different, quieter side of Bond than the other stunts on the list. And where would we be if we didn't include Jackie Chan on a top stunts list? Jackie has been doing his own stunts for over 40 years in more than 100 different films and has broken nearly every bone in his body to show for it. From his incredible Who Am I building slide, to his Armor of God jump onto a hot air balloon, to his near-death close encounter with the tree, Jackie has roller skated under semis, dangled from helicopters, tangled with circular saws, and spit actual hot pepper juice onto his bloody knuckles, all for the sake of a stunt. The thing that makes him so spectacular is that he's rarely ever faking it. There's no CGI, no wires, and often not even a safety net. But the absolute best example of Jackie Chan's stunt work has to be his 70-foot slide down a pole through live electrical wires and a giant sheet of glass. Not only did he suffer cuts, electrocution, a dislocated pelvis, and near paralysis from the stunt, but he burned off all the skin on his hands from sliding down the pole. Commitment or death wish, there's no disputing that Jackie Chan is one of the greatest stuntmen of all time. Speaking of all-time greats, let's not forget some of the classic originators of movie stunt work, like Buster Keaton, a man who ran on top of trains, hung from waterfalls, and stood under collapsing houses, a stunt which Jackie Chan lovingly paid homage to. But our number 3 goes to another stunt that inspired Mr. Chan, Harold Lloyd in Safety Last. Safety Last is most famous for the clock dangling stunt, a feat of real athleticism that was thankfully less dangerous than it looked, but the rest of Lloyd's climb up multiple stories very clearly trades in real danger. This is 1923, where there was no green screen, no CGI, and no painting out wires. So the shots of him climbing up a sheer building face are exactly that. So you can thank Harold Lloyd for helping found a tradition of doing crazy shit, all for the sake of our entertainment. In keeping with classics, next up at number 2 is the Chariot Race from Ben-Hur. The very definition of an epic, Ben-Hur was the most expensive film shot at the time at a massive $15 million. A quarter of that money was spent on this chariot scene, which featured 78 horses and 15,000 extras on an 18-acre set over the course of 5 weeks. What's even more astounding is that, with only one exception, Charlton Heston and Stephen Boyd drove their own chariots in every shot. The one occasion Charlton Heston used a stunt double was for the 100% real chariot jump. Now, the stunts were co-directed by legendary coordinator Yakima Canutt, who used his son Joe to double Heston for the jump. But when Joe went to do the jump, he didn't listen to his father's suggestion to slow down and hook himself in, and consequently tumbled out of the chariot, a moment which made it into the final cut completely unplanned. But everyone watching, his father included, thought he had surely died as they saw the horses drag him along the ground untethered until he was fortunately able to crawl back into the chariot to safety, with only a scratch on his chin to show for it. But it almost seemed hypocritical of Yakima to talk to his son about hooking in and slowing down if you consider our number 1 spot, Stagecoach. Now, we mentioned Yakima being a legendary stunt coordinator, but it's pretty tough to get to that position without being a legendary stuntman first. And that's exactly what Yakima did, getting started as a rodeo rider and moving on to perform the stunts in the Lone Ranger and Zorro series. But before he did that, he pulled off one of the craziest stunts of all time in John Ford's Stagecoach. After jumping from one horse to another, Yakima dropped down beneath him and let go, passing underneath the galloping legs of 6 horses and the wheels of a stagecoach. Steven Spielberg even paid homage to this stunt in Raiders of the Lost Ark. But Canutt's 1930 drop was both groundbreaking and death-defying, which is why we think it's the number 1 stunt of all time. So what do you think? Did we leave any of your favorite stunts out? Were any of the ones we mentioned here not up to snuff? Let us know in the comments below and subscribe to CineFix for more IndieWire movie list.